was born in Laredo. My parents were sometimes not very geared to attending church. My mother was sick since I was about 2.5 years. She had a miscarriage and she didn't get taken care of like she should, so she was mostly in bed. But I remember very well. I'm not sure if I was 2 yet, but I remember she was cooking in the kitchen, and she had a little radio on the table where she was preparing the food. I didn't know anything about what was going on. All I saw is that she got very nervous when she heard this. And then she stopped what she was doing and she went to pray. And I went to the front room, which was a living room, and I opened the windows, and there were people running. Women would get their shawls and they would run. There was a Catholic church about 3 or 4 blocks from my house. But I knew that was not my church. I knew they had idols in it, and I knew that I didn't belong there. But they were running to church. They had heard the news. Pearl Harbor had been attacked, so that meant we were going into war. I didn't know anything about it. All I knew was that something was wrong. And that's very early for me to remember, or that I remembered that I was not a Catholic. I was a Protestant. And that church there was a Catholic church, and I didn't belong there. So I knew my church was way over there, away from the house. But I knew that there was something different about me, because I didn't go to that church. It didn't bother me that I didn't go to that church. It was just something different that I didn't understand yet. And then I remember later on, when I started attending school, my parents saw it fit that I go to kindergarten in a Christian school. It was called Christian Union. There was people from every Christian belief worked there. And most of them were missionaries. And they taught. And I went to kindergarten there, and that's where my parents saw it fit that I go. My brothers and sisters all went there too. And so I remember since I was very, very little, I was taught about the Bible. I memorized a lot of verses, but I would repeat them like a parrot would repeat something that he heard. I didn't know what was, it was just something that was expected of me to do. We went to Sunday school, and every time we went to Sunday school, I had to have a verse to say in front of the church. So I did. My mother would teach me a verse. And so I grew up memorizing verses and repeating them in front of the church. Well, as I grew up, my father was transferred to the valley. He was given the management of a warehouse for this company in Rio Grande City. So we had to move. And we were there maybe 3 or 4 years. Again, I was in church there in Rio Grande City. And by the way, I had, I don't know if any of you remember Elida Falcon. She was my Sunday school teacher. She was a good woman, a very, very religious woman. Anyway, we were there for maybe 4 or 5 years, and then we came back to Laredo. And when we lived in Laredo again, my father had to rent a house way over on the other side of town, where I would have to take 3 buses in order to get to school, because I was back again in that private school that they saw fit that I go to. So my father wouldn't have me transfer in that many buses. he put me in the dormitory. So I was in the dorm. And this dorm was maybe 4 or 5 blocks from the railroads. So one night, while I was in school, they would teach us Bible. That was one of the subjects. And I remember hearing about the trumpets sounding before the Lord came. I was sleeping one night, and I heard the train, the sound of the train. I said, oh Lord, I'm going to go to hell because I haven't repented. I haven't given my life to you. So right then and there, I got down off my bed and I prayed because I didn't want to be left behind. So as it turned out, then I heard the rumble of the train, so I knew it wasn't the Lord. But it served a good purpose.
Whatever it takes, Jesus.
Yeah, and so as I grew up, I learned more about the Lord. But before I gave my life to the Lord, I used to have a plan for getting to heaven. One of my grandfathers had been a priest, or was studying to be a priest. And then my other grandfather had taught in a seminary in Monterrey, Church of Christ Seminary. So I thought I was going to follow my grandfather into heaven. Because he'd be wearing, in my mind, he would be wearing one of those tuxedos that had the long tails, like Liberace. And I was going to hop on one of those boat tails and ride into heaven. But then the teacher, the Bible teacher, said, nothing that your grandparents have done, nothing that anybody else has done will help you get into heaven. You have to do it on your own. So then I realized that I had to be right with the Lord so I could get into heaven. And that's when I started being more serious about my salvation. But, oh, by the way, my mother was operated when we were in the valley, when we were in Tijuana City. So then she was a whole lot better after I was maybe 11 or 12 when she got operated on. But all this time she had been hemorrhaging and, heavily while I was growing up, so she couldn't do a lot of hard work. So it was up to my sister and me to do the housework. But I learned how to take care of the house, I didn't cook because I was the only thing she could do. So I didn't learn to cook, but I had to wash dishes and do everything else in the house. Wash, iron, scrub floors, get them waxed, the whole bit. So I would do all that, but not the cooking. So I married a husband who didn't know I didn't know how to cook. Anyway, we learned together, but it was a learning time for me, and so I'm grateful that I finally came to terms with the Lord, and He reached out to me.
Amen. And how many siblings did you have?
I have 4. I have 1 sister and 3 brothers.
Amen. Amen. Okay. And then talk about your children. Where are they at right now?
My children are scattered. I have 2 living in Arizona. 1 lives in Phoenix, and the other one lives in Tucson. The one in Phoenix is the first one, and then the second one is in Tucson. The third one lives in Vermont, and then Miguel lives here in Corpus.
Oh, we hardly ever see him around here.
No.
Amen. 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 Okay, and then you and brother, you were married in what year?
My husband and I were married in 59.
1959.
And tomorrow would have been our anniversary.
Really? Praise God.
We would have been 60 years tomorrow, married 60 years, but he's gone.
And as probably most of you know or remember, brother was a Methodist, United Methodist minister. How long were you both in ministry together?
20 years.
20 years, amen.
He was a school teacher when I married him. He taught in Holding Institute, and that's when I met him and when we got married.
Amen. Praise God. Well, thank you for sharing that. A couple specific questions I want to ask you is, when did you get to Kelsey? When did you and your family join Kelsey here in Corpus?
We came to Corpus in August of 2012. We started off Tulia, which is a town in the Panhandle, 50 miles south of Amarillo. I was driving. By the time I got to the next little town, which is 25 miles away, I had already dozed off 4 times because I was very exhausted. I had started packing since February, and here it was August, and I had worked all that time packing and giving away stuff and sorting through a house. My husband had tons of books. So when he wasn't looking, I'd pack them up and call this friend of ours. He's a young guy who was studying to be a minister in the Pentecostal church. I'd say, Richard, come and get this box out of here quick before Mariano finds out what I'm doing. So he would come and take loads and loads of books. And so he got the benefit of my husband's books. And well, we came over here, and when we got here, I had to see a doctor right away because I was, I didn't know what was wrong with me. My husband didn't either. My son didn't know what was wrong with me. It turns out I was just exhausted. It took me several months in order for me to get my strength back and be able to do some work. When my son came from Phoenix to help us move, there was a bomb scare in the airport in San Antonio where he was going to land. So Miguel went to get him. By the way, my husband drove from where I was dozing off. He picked up and drove all the way over here. By that time, he wasn't driving much because he was, already beyond driving age. But he had to drive. So anyway, Miguel went to get my other son from the airport, and he was rejected, or he was stopped. He couldn't go any further because there was a bomb threat in the airport. Turns out that it was somebody who had left his suitcase somewhere and walked off to the bathroom, and they went out and got him some lunch, and and the airport just got real wild, and they thought it was a bomb in the suitcase. Anyway, it took me a spell, a good while to get his brother to come in and help us. Miguel had driven from Amarillo, and he had worked the day, and the day before we left, he had worked loading the truck. So he was pretty beat up. So he asked his oldest brother to drive the truck, and then my grandson was coming with him, drove the car, because Mariano was also very tired from driving. He wasn't used to driving anymore, so we got helped. The Lord has been with us all the time, so he hasn't left us, He provides for us all the time. So.
And what were some of your first impressions of Corpus Christi and of Kelsey that you can remember?
Well, when I came, I didn't become a member of Kelsey. We were going to El Buen Pastor. And we went there for maybe 4 or 5 months. And we would come to eat breakfast here and then go to El Buen Pastor. My son would take us to El Buen Pastor. Turns out that that we decided to come to Kelsey. My husband and I were shopping at Sam's one time, and Elda and Mario were there, and they came and hugged us and, you know, started talking to us about how we were and how things were going for us. And it shocked me to think that somebody from Kelsey would come and greet us that way and, you know, be that loving with us when we were going to El Buen Pastor. So then I thought, I think we're in the wrong place. So we came over here, and Brother Pina, the pastor that was in here, received us as members. Of course, my husband could only be associate, because his membership was in the Conference of Arizona.
Now, I know all pastors' wives hold their husbands as their favorite pastor, right? So,
No.
But do you have any particular pastors that you've had in your life, whether here in Texas or anywhere else, that have been a particular blessing to you?
The earliest one I can remember was Abel Gomez, and he was a pastor here. He was pastoring in Laredo, and I can remember him and his wife. She used to load up the car with a whole bunch of us kids and take us home. So and this was Lala, before this last wife. So that's way back when I can remember a pastor that I really thought and looked up to. I was just a kid, but I thought he was quite a guy. And then in Arizona, we had the pastor of First Church, Glendale, was Ed Ramsey, and he was a very good guy also. He helped us a lot, and he opened a lot of doors for us. And I don't mean doors like that. I mean, he opened places that we could benefit from, where we could get benefit. So he was very, very good to us.
Very good. So, since you've been a part of Kelsey these last few years, have there been any particular experiences that really stand out in your memory?
The one thing that happened to us here in Kelsey was it was in November. And my husband woke up in the middle of the night and he said, "You need to take me to emergency." I asked him, "Right now?" He said, "No, in the morning." So I got up, and he got up and took a shower. And after he got out of the shower, I went in and took a shower, because I said, "I'm going to be ready for whenever morning comes, I'll take him to ER." So I did. And he was in there a week. But during that week, he was very anxious. One time I went to the cafeteria and bought something to eat, but I did not want to eat in the room with him because he couldn't eat solid foods. He was being fed intravenously. So I went outside in the little waiting room and ate. By the time I got back, he was all bloody. He had pulled out the IV and pulled off all the hard monitors and everything. He just pulled everything off. I didn't realize that he had sleep apnea, and I didn't realize that he was the carbon dioxide in his blood was very high. When it did that, he'd go berserk. And I didn't realize that, but I of course called the nurses. Well, to make a long story short, while he was there, I had to get my son from Tucson to come and help because he was already retired. But we were looking for a place to put him into rehab. So my son and I were out. And some of the church people were there while we weren't. And they fed him because he couldn't feed himself. So they fed him his lunch or his dinner, whatever was there. And that's something I didn't even ask for. But the church was willing to be there for him. And so it was very much more caring than I had ever experienced before. So it made an impact on me. He was there from Saturday to Saturday. And then that Saturday was the first day, the last Saturday was the first day he got to eat solid foods. So I was supposed to look at this monitor, and if it had from 90 to 100 of oxygen, I could feed him. Well, it was between the 90 and the 100, so I fed him. And that's the last time he ate, because he just, the machine started sounding, and when the machine started sounding, there was 2 nurses in the room with me. They started going crazy. They started calling code blue over the PA, and then the room got full of people. Then I just got to a corner of the room where I wouldn't be in their way. I started watching what they were doing. And they started pumping his chest. He came around for about a second, and then he just died. They were basically brutalizing his body, which was lifeless anymore. So I said, just let him be. He's in peace. He'd be all right. I said, I'm his wife, and I have authority over him. I said, and this is my son, because Miguel had already arrived, and he also has authority over him. So my son said, yes, leave him be. Once before they had told me, they had asked, when we lived in Tulia, if I would give consent to unplug him. I said, no. So he transferred him to Amarillo that time, but this time I knew it was too far gone. So I just said, don't bother with the body anymore, you just leave him be. So we started calling everybody, and everybody was pastor. So we called him, and he and Gloria were there with us. And so that was very, very comforting to us. So, yeah, Kelsey's been more than a backup for us. It's been a family. And even after my husband died, everybody kept praying for us. And that strengthened me. It strengthened me to, stay alert and stay focused on what I was supposed to be doing. So I praise the Lord for the support of Kelsey.
Well, thank you for sharing that very sacred moment. It's a powerful family moment, and thank you for sharing that with us. This next question, I definitely don't want to assume, so if there's anything else, but can you think of what has been the most difficult thing that you've had to do in your life?
Put up with my husband going into the ministry. We were used to, he was a teacher and I was a teacher's aide, so we would go to school together, and then all the kids and us would come home and we would have dinner and everything, but it was a family time. When he came to the ministry, I was still a teacher's aide up in Arizona, and I would come home and look after the kids, but he would be like 9:30 or 10:30 when he'd get home. And so it got to be to where the kids would start asking me, when are we going to get to see Dad? It wasn't my fault that they weren't seeing him, but he'd leave early and then come in very late when they were already in bed, because some were going to university, others were going to college and some in high school. So I had a full load to take care of, and he wasn't there to help. He wasn't physically there to help. He supported me, you know, he paid for the house and everything, but he did not help me guide the kids or see what about them. I had to carry the full load.
You got through it with God's help. Amen. Just a couple more questions, if you don't mind. So if you knew that younger generations would listen carefully, what 2 or 3 things would you want them to know about life?
If you start off on the right foot with the Lord, you'll have a lot less problems than if you don't. You're staying with the Lord, being with the Lord, just trusting Him for every need that you have. You'll save a lot of problems, a lot of headaches. I had a lot of experiences with kids that I don't wish on any parent. You see them and you think they're normal and they're good, they've always been well behaved. It's not so. Not so. But they're my kids, and I wouldn't give them up, even when they were being accused of this and that and the other. I said, no, you don't put that on him because it's not his fault.
Sure. Amen. Don't mess with Mama Bear, right?
Right.
Okay, my final question then. In all of your experiences in life, how do you hope that you will be remembered?
Well, I hope that I leave a legacy of kids working for the benefit of others. I get my pension that y'all have to pay for, by the way. When you give your offering, part of it goes to a fund that takes care of pastors' widows. And that's where I get my pension from. And I believe that God doesn't give me the money for me, for just me. I give a little bit to here and I give a little bit to there, because I know the Lord's going to say, what did you do with your money? I'm going to say, Lord, I tried my best to share. But yes, that's the way I would like to be remembered, that we need to share what the Lord's given us.